Hello everyone, welcome back to Reload Revelation, the show where we break down some gear, talk about the news, and overall, have a good time. I'm your host, Ryan Souls, and thank you so much for tuning in today. If you like this content, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications, and as always, let's get into the stories. So for the first story I have for you today, it turns out that two men from Michigan, specifically Westland, Michigan, or as we call it, the Wasteland, was caught with improvised Molotov cocktails. I don't know how improvised Molotov cocktails can get. It turns out that they were wanted for allegedly running over police officers with their vehicle. It turns out, too, that they had a suspected stolen U-Haul truck filled with weapons. That's still an ongoing investigation. They were obviously arrested for potential doing harm with these Molotov cocktails. Our next story, though, on Sunday before Super Bowl, the Lakewood church that is famously ran by Joel Osteen, the televangelist, had a shooting in services. Specifically, they said it was Spanish-speaking service. What's really interesting, and I'm going to just tell you a personal story here, while tracking this info down, trying to figure out what is really going on, I was pulling what was left of my hair out. I was so surprised that not only person from El Salvador, okay, so that's in Central America, was marked as white. Why? Why was that a thing? Are they trying to skew the numbers? Is that what they're going for? Is there a reason why supposedly the shooter came in with a 5-year-old reported on Sunday, now 7-year-old, as they claim now, for lack of a better term, a human shield? Abhorrent to say the least. The fact that the shooter would use this kid as a human shield. It's a grave story. However, it's got to be told. Why? This is why. This is what the media will not tell you. Because it took 2 off-duty law enforcement officers to take down this shooter. So not only did they do what they had to do off time, but they're not going to tell you that. Why? Because it was 2 good guys with guns taking down a bad guy with a gun. It's a statement that everyone that is anti-Second Amendment hates. But it's true. And it's not the only one. I mean, Sutherland Springs shooting had a man with his own AR-15, or AR-15 style rifle, as the big media would like to call it, took down a shooter that went into his church and started taking lives. And it took him to do that. That's why they won't tell you this. They don't want you to see the heroes that saved countless lives that day. Why? Because they don't want you to have the guns. They don't want any of the guns being glorified in that way. Now, of course, as everyone knows here, guns are a tool. They're a tool to do certain things, whether it be hunting, self-defense, you name it. Even bad things, like inflicting violence upon tons of people. Now, of course, one of the other things with this shooter is that it is going around that the shooter is transgender, or was transgender. It's interesting to see because that's what all these people care about now.
So she has utilized both male and female names, but through all of our investigation to this point, talking with individuals, interviews, documents, Houston Police Department reports, she has been identified this entire time as female.
It's not the fact that this shooter inflicted violence or tried to inflict violence on people just trying to go to a Sunday service. They're more worried about, well, what's the pronouns? Really? That's what you're worried about. Not the fact that traveled from El Salvador, got marked white on record, carried a weapon that had the words Free Palestine on it. Yeah, forgot to mention that part. Free Palestine marking on this weapon. Okay, so you're telling me that an El Salvadorian is so in tune with the Free Palestine movement that this is out of the shooter's own accord? Wasn't radicalized in any way? The people that are radicalizing others, first it was, well, the far right is now pushing trans people to be violent. It's pretty much the exact opposite. It's the Democrats enabling enabling these people, saying you can do whatever you want, you could be whatever you want, you could be whatever gender you want. It doesn't matter. And it's following a pattern. And the anti-gun people are saying, well, all these latest shootings, well, they were all done with an AR-15. Okay. But can we not also talk about the fact that most of them, if not all, identified as either transgendered or non-binary or you name it, something other than what they were made in God's image of? Not to mention also that the police have cited the shooter as having a problem with mental illness in years past, all the way up to, I believe it's 2016. So they knew about this. They knew that this shooter was going to be needed to be watched over a little bit more. Everything's checking all the boxes. I got to hand it to those police officers that were off duty and they did what they needed to do. So hats off to them. And I hope that they can help their community day by day even more now that this tragic event could have been a lot more tragic if they were not there. So for the weapon that I have for you today, it's honestly a very cool piece of history. This is a 36 caliber black and powder single action revolver. Honestly, one of my favorite. However, this is unfortunately, this is only for decoration right now. There's a few parts that need to get repaired, but the working parts still kind of work all in the same. So to kind of take you through how this works is, obviously you got your hammer back here, which with a single action, you pull the hammer back, press the trigger, it fires the round. But with black powder, it's a lot more antiquated, to say the least. So on this, you have to load in your own rounds, but not just the rounds that we know today, those modern rounds. You have to load in the powder, the ball, the wad, and your, in this case, percussion caps. So to do that, you have to fill in your cylinder with black powder, load your ball in, and then you use this part, which just shoots out like that. Okay, this is your ramrod. This is what pushes, and if you can see, pushes and just compresses that down, and you do that for each single shot. And once that's done, you would load your percussion cap on the other side of the cylinder, and then you have a fully loaded black powder revolver ready to go. 36 caliber is hefty, to say the least. And on this one, and most revolvers of this time, the hammer has what they call a half cock position, which means this is safe. The trigger's not going to press, the hammer's not going to go forward. And now, when you press the trigger, that hammer's going to fly down all those stops. It's going to hit that percussion cap. It's going to ignite the black powder, shooting the ball all the way down the barrel. Very early rendition of like a single action army, which is the cowboy gun that everybody knows. It's one of these just very nice, form-fitting. I've always liked shooting revolvers. They just feel better in the hand for me. Like I can aim down that no problem, and it's just very comfortable. It's not a weird wrist break or anything of that sort. It is just overall a very nice piece of history. It's got a brass frame, which, because it's black powder, some black powder loads don't need as high of a rigidity as smokeless powder, which is the modern ammo powder that people use for modern rifles, or in this case, handguns. So overall, it's very hefty. I would probably clock this in at about 5 pounds, so it's heavy for a revolver. As far as pulling the hammer back, seeing that it works, and all that good stuff, I mean, you can easily pull it back. I'm just gonna release it nice and easy because obviously, with this being decoration, you don't want to ruin it. But since I can't break it down at most for you, I can tell you that a lot of these earlier models, it's a very, very slow reload. You have to load in the powder, then load in your ball, load in your wad, spin the cylinder around, put the ramrod down, clasp it back up, repeat the process. So you know, this Navy Arms revolver, this black powder revolver, is just a very, very cool piece of history. The hammer strength on it, relatively comfortable for the time. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't sit a percussion cap on this, you know, loaded, but that's just me. I don't know what they did back then. They probably did the same thing where they sat it on an empty chamber and then everything else was loaded up, kind of like a cowboy load, but just something different. The trigger, relatively small. However, for something like this, real easy to manipulate. I mean, this is just very, very... I wouldn't say ancient. That sounds bad. I wouldn't say ancient. However, it's older. It's got one brass bead sight at the top, and then when you pull back the hammer, there's a ridge where, kinda, where you would line up the ridge between the bead, and that would be your accurate shot. It's got wood pistol grip on there, nice curvature, really feels good in the hand, and overall, this is just a very nice, different, all in all, great piece of history revolver. So a lot of people talk about their EDC or everyday carry, which can be left up for a lot of personal interpretation. I mean, what you carry benefits you might not benefit me, and vice versa. But there's one thing that everyone should be carrying, at least in some aspect, and that is a utility knife. And of course, when I'm going out, I always carry this one. And it's a simple pocket knife from Gerber. It's a skeleton frame, which means that there is no substantial grips on it, which makes it easier to put in and out of the pocket. It's just a flip knife. It's got a locking kind of tang. The tang pushes in and it keeps it from folding back in. Overall, it is just a very good, sharp knife. You know, it's just used for everyday use, you know, cutting boxes, stuff like that, which I know you shouldn't really be cutting boxes with a knife, but it looks better. It looks cool. Frame and structure and all that, it is perfectly sound. I mean, this was my dad's before he got his new knife, and I carry it around with me every day because it's good to think about your dad once in a while. As far as the actual like blade itself and point, it's got a nice point to it. The edge still is pretty sharp. If you maintain it, it can last you a very good long time. Gerber, of course, we've had Gerber knives before on the show. They're a good brand. I know Bear Grylls did a thing with Gerber, which was kind of a controversial thing because many people, you know, obviously he had a camera crew with him on his survival show, which we don't even have to get into that. We all know about that one. However, his deal with Gerber made these knives very, very nice, affordable. They're super affordable to the everyday person. And overall, if it came down to it, could use it as a self-defense weapon. I mean, obviously, this is the last resort. You know, if they get you close with this, then wow, yeah, you got a problem on your hands. But it, you know, it's about, I would say 1.5 inches of blade, which is perfectly fine for everyday use. And overall, it's just a very nice, well-constructed pocket knife made by Gerber. So that's my everyday carry knife. Thank you guys so much for watching again. I truly appreciate it. If you like this content, do me a favor, please subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, and as always, remember these 5 rules. Never point your firearm at anything you don't intend on shooting. Know what is behind your target at all times. Be aware of your surroundings. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And of course, have fun. I'm Ryan Souls for Reload Revelation. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And remember, go catch some R&R.